left behind the couch there in the window. And if you look at that picture, I like this picture because everywhere you go, this is what you see. Grandparents, children, young people of all ages, and everyone has their technology device. Literacy is no longer primarily print. Numerous formats, and a lot of them are ongoing simultaneously. When people are on their mobile devices, we're looking toward the future. So we all realize that literacy has changed. In addition to that, when we think about the changes of literacy, I hear so many people, particularly educators, have to struggle with all of the new platforms, flood of information coming at us. Not only a flood of information in online forms on the internet, but also the ability to curate all that information ourselves. I've heard some people say everyone thinks they're a journalist now because we can all have a blog, we can all share our online content. Now everyone can be a photographer, and we all can take great quality, videos right on our phones and upload them to the web. So we're journalists, we're photographers, we're videographers, and now we're curators. Everyone can be a librarian. You can just curate your own things on these platforms like Pinterest, Scoopit, and all these other places. So there's a flood of information coming at us every single day. And to be meta-literate, or to be a literate person in global digital participatory culture, it really takes some skill. And that's what I want to talk about today. Meta. We hear meta as a prefix all the time around us. As educators, I'm sure you're familiar with metacognition. And metacognition is any individual thinking about their thinking. It's important to do that, to be aware of all that's going on in our brain. And most educators have had to study metacognition and learn about how does the human brain actually work? How do children, how do young adults learn? Well, there are other forms and words that we place this prefix meta in front of. And for me, I was really interested in how our culture is changing, particularly for me. I noticed it in 2008. I was in my school library in 2008, and I was looking around at all the beautiful books in this beautiful physical library that had this loft up above where the kids could go up there and read. And I had this sensation of the world literally shaking underneath my feet because I thought to myself, modern culture. And that's when I ran into postmodernism, which I'm sure most of you are fully aware of postmodernism, or the deconstruction of grand narratives and all of that philosophy. When I learned about postmodernism, I began to realize it's already over. It has ended. And we are in what a line that's beyond postmodernism with all of its cynical deconstruction. Metamodernism, if you want to look into that a little bit, it provides more hope for our future. And so I think that kind of coincides with what I'm talking about, how literacy has changed. Culture has changed, and so has literacy. In metamodernism, we hear the term metadata. The whole internet runs on metadata. All now running on metadata. It's the data Davidson's snow crash, and the concept of the metaverse as this place, this universe that's kind of beyond. And I think most of us realize now that Second Life is not the only virtual world, and many of us have begun to think of the metaverse as all of the virtual worlds, which perhaps in the future will evolve into one platform, where we're able to hypergrid jump or bring our content into other worlds. So I'm talking about meta. We've got metacognition, metamodernism, metadata in the metaverse. And I think all of that will help you understand meta-literacy. What that really means is literacy is no longer print or any particular format. It's all these different types of literacy interacting simultaneously. And for those of us that have been in a virtual, most of you here are educators working in a virtual world, you're pretty comfortable juggling all these things. So you realize really that what I'm saying is the juggling act of evaluating content in numerous formats, while you're working. And I think students in the future need to understand the skills necessary to be meta-literate in order to be successful digital citizens, physical citizens, or learners in any format. So some ways to become meta literate. On this slide, you see the little heart there. Basically, meta literacy is not any different than information literacy, and there are so many different models of that, but it boils down to being able to evaluate content. Rather than just juggle it all and just keep scrolling through it and having all these things come at you, a meta-literate person knows how to weed out all the nonsense and evaluate for high quality. A meta-literate person also really understands and respects the ethical issues at hand with literacy, the ethics of becoming a good digital citizen, and what that requires. Yes,
can you
hear
hold on for just a minute?
Yes, I think somebody else's mic is open. Is that right?
Yeah, Miramill 2000, could you please turn your microphone off? I'd hate to eject you. I know you're only 21 days old, but I can't figure out what Val's saying. Thank you. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Beth. Great. So basically evaluating content and then understanding the ethics behind all of the content that we juggle every day. The ethics meaning understanding privacy, and that even though it seems like it's dead, it's not. It's important to understand privacy in all the different forms of literacy. Privacy in the physical world, privacy in the virtual world, privacy in the augmented world. Privacy is an important concept to understand ethical behavior and respect for intellectual property. I know as a librarian, I try to help students understand when to give credit, when credit is due. And as educators, this is kind of changing because, copyright law is so different today with students being able to upload content themselves. I know kindergartners that are uploading content to the web. And so understanding intellectual property, even kindergartners need to understand that you credit somebody's work. So that's part of being meta literate. So the four corners here: evaluating content, understanding ethical behavior, and then being able to share and collaborate. As I said, we live in global digital participatory culture. Kindergartners are sharing their work across the globe. They can have what used to be a pen pal. They may have a Skype pal, over in another country. And so being able to share and collaborate in these participatory environments like virtual worlds. I have students that have worked and shared and collaborated in Minecraft, for example. And so understanding how to do that in high quality for deep learning is an important thing that comes in your head, or are you really thinking about what it is you're sharing and demonstrating your growth, whether that's artistically, aesthetically, or academically, in whatever way that you're learning. So those are ways that we can think about literacy in a new way, in new platforms, whether they're physical, virtual, or augmented. Some of the things that I'm reading about meta-literacy, and you can see this picture I took of the book I'm currently reading, it's Jacobson and Mackey. They're some of the first researchers to come up with this term, meta-literacy. And sometimes we get frustrated over the whole concept of nomenclature. I mean, isn't literacy just literacy? Why do we have to argue over all these terms? But it really is important, because if you just use the word literacy, you don't really understand what it means. Literacy in the old days used to just mean you could read. Well, just being able to read is no longer enough. And so to talk about these concepts, we have to use words. And in order to communicate effectively on these different issues of deep learning in the future, we need to discuss the terms and agree upon the words. Say a rosebud, but I don't know. There's some flowers we've never met before. So I think meta-literacy is an interesting term, and it's one worthy of discussion. And especially when we're talking about, in that other picture up there on my slide, I'm using, I think that might be the Oculus Rift, although I've tried several of the new virtual reality headsets, and that's a whole other concept of literacy, thinking about what's the point of trying on these headsets what is the point of all of this information? It really is the same as what's the point of reading that book. It's all about what am I taking into my brain? Do I really want that? And that's what I mean when I talk about meta-literacy in any format. So I'm talking about meta-literacy in the metaverse, and I'll explain just a little bit about what I do here and how that relates to meta-literacy. I'm currently a virtual world librarian, and I'm working at the Community Virtual Library, and I know many of you about the Community Virtual Library, a landmark to the Community Virtual Library, and then 2 other note cards kind of explaining some upcoming things that we currently have going on that might be of interest to you and your virtual world communities. The Community Virtual Library, and I've just jotted down a few notes about it up here. Why? Why do we need a Community Virtual Library? Well, in order to share resources and learn in a space like this, just like in the physical world, sometimes it's difficult to find the best places or to find the best communities. And so, just as I do in my physical library, my goal here is to find the best resources I can and share them with the community here in the virtual world. And I know I've worked with some of you doing that, the Virtual Pioneers. I've worked with SPIF and that group for a long, long time, I think close to a decade. And what great work some of you all are doing here, SPIF. I'll explain just a little here for the future of education. That love it, all the way up through. You can certainly use this, and people who have challenging physical disabilities that can use spaces like this. What do we share? We can share not only resources and content that are that you can read. We can interact with this content across time in virtual world libraries, but we are looking at having branches in Kitely, in InWorlds, in OpenSim, possibly in Avacon, in lots of other virtual worlds, because this is certainly not the only space out there. So you'll notice one of the note cards that are in the box, if you click on it, is a tour that we're taking on October 2nd to Metaverse Libraries in Kitely. And I've had some people say, well, Val, why would you want to take people to another virtual world? Aren't you just taking them away from the Community Virtual Library? I don't think so. I mean, no one has to leave Second Life if they don't want it. It's expensive. If you're looking for a space, she will help you get it for free. She will help you find anything you need there. And we're building a library there to create your avatar early, though, and not wait till that day in case you have some trouble. Also, on that same topic, we have built at the Community Virtual Library a hypergrid, creating a whole avatar from scratch or whatever it is that you need to know. I'm no expert at that, but I do. That would lead to what you're doing in another virtual world. So up on that slide there you see why, what, where, not just Second Life, who, anyone, librarians, educators, learners, we are all collaborate and go to the other, to what other people are doing. So I feel like librarians, educators, learners, everyone who's interested in learning here really needs to connect and collaborate. So, and on that note, my second note card in the box is about a program we have coming up this Sunday, and Ewan, I think, is right here. Ewan, I hope I said your name right, Bonham, is going to be speaking about the Community Cultural Hub project. He's been doing a lot of work on connecting communities, and so we're going to hear from him, and that might give the Community Virtual Library some tips on how to connect and collaborate with all of these various communities so that we don't just isolate ourselves and try to reinvent the wheel, but we can help people find those spaces that really need their information and learning needs. So becoming meta-literate, as I said. And when can we do this? What's great about virtual worlds is they're both synchronous and asynchronous. I know all of you already realize this, but you can come in alone and learn at 2 o'clock in the morning, or you can come into a meeting like this and collaborate in a group. So it's really, it really satisfies all the different learning styles once you've mastered the steep learning curve that we always hear so much about in virtual worlds, which hopefully in the future that learning curve will not be quite so steep. Those of you that have worked with young students in Minecraft, however, realize that I had a group of 5th graders. They wouldn't find Second Life steep learning curve at all. They were masters of Minecraft. So the next generation is already ready. So meta literacy, as I said, goes beyond the fun of interactive VR. I've been going to meetups, and just different. I guess you'd call them, or just around the city, they have these high-tech meetups and groups that you can go and try on the virtual reality headsets. And I was at one last week, and everything isn't always simply fun and interactive. Sometimes you do have to really struggle and read to learn something really difficult. So I think, meta literacy, of course, interaction is great. And of course, think deeply, not just jump to the next fun app. It goes beyond learning the latest tech tool, because it's just app. My last couple years in my school library, I became more of an iPad expert troubleshooting apps than I did teaching, what is really high quality literature. So sometimes I think, we have to balance that. And deep learning sometimes requires linear, focused thinking. And believe it or not, sometimes even reading. Okay, enough of that. So I wanted to put a little slide up here because that's one thing about global digital participatory culture. It's a constant juggling act. This Rubik's Cube of all these faces reminded me of how difficult it is to keep up with all of our connections and all of our communities. And that's the puzzle that I'm working on, is to try to connect these communities. But yeah, they're constantly coming at us, and it's constantly changing. But I think if we just forget about that, forget about trying to figure it out and make it static. It's not going to be a static cube that is done. It's going to be an ever-changing process of learning. And that's why meta literacy is different. The hierarchy of learning is no longer that linear encyclopedia of knowledge where you read it all and then you close the book. Nope, it's constantly changing, constantly coming at you, and so once you get past thinking that way, you can really just relax and keep learning and not feel like you have to figure it out. And one other point about meta literacy that I think is important is we live in a culture where there is a blurry line between professional and personal life. And those of you that have Facebook accounts certainly recognize that. It's so difficult to separate your personal life from your professional life. And I think in virtual worlds, we have an opportunity to do that, perhaps that's a whole nother topic that we could do a whole session on. Some of you may have an alt so that you can go do just fun personal things, with a different avatar. For me, my avatar is my professional identity, and that blurry line, I think it really is important. I try to teach my students that digital citizens understand their online identity and the footprints that they are leaving for the future, and that's really a huge part of meta literacy. The students that we have in our schools and classrooms today are not just consumers of information. All of you realize they are prosumers of information. And Alvin Toffler is the one that first coined that term, prosumer being someone who not only consumes, but also produces. They consume and produce media and content, and we certainly do that here in a virtual world. We consume all the great content that we interact with here, and we also can produce and create and build ourselves. And that's wonderful, and it's exciting, and it's so creative that we can be prosumers. But a meta-literate prosumer always thinks about evaluating the high content, and thinks about aesthetic growth, and certainly thinks about big credit where credit is due. All of those important elements of meta literacy. Some of the current examples that we have at the Community Virtual Library are listed in this, I think this might be my final slide. Art in Virtual Worlds is our current art exhibit. We World's Party is on October the 12th. We've got book discussions, trivia nights, and so what I thought I might do now is perhaps we could go over and meet. I'll stand up here, go over by my slides. To make this a little more interactive, I thought we could teleport over to the community virtual library, and I could just show you a few of the projects that we have going on that illustrate meta literacy.
Val,
Yes.
I would like to take questions first, and also I have an announcement, and Joey has a short announcement.
Certainly. We'll do that first, and then we can take our field trip.
Okay. I wanted to invite you all to join the ISTE Virtual Environment Network this Thursday at 5 p.m. for a tour of a new virtual. Joey Obama is going.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Can you all hear me okay? I'm just jotting down the notes real quick here. Okay, so in many cases is a suggested destination. It's a game base with 5 levels. You're doing everything from there's a virtual, you have to search for skulls, and we also developed a lot of prizes. For me and Libby, it was a matter of learning all different kinds of things, like how to make a surfboard and script it and all those things that I've never done before. So it's been a fun experience. But if you'd like to check it out, it's running till the 15th of November. If you would like the note card, just hit me up in IM and I'll gladly give you a copy. And if you want to know how things are put together, please ask as well. I gave a virtual tour before, but unfortunately it's like the first day going back to school, so it might have been a little.
I'm from the Games and Sims Network, and we happen to have a chapter. I have some questions for you. So my question really is starting with the definition of meta literacy, because I wasn't sure about some of that. First of all, it sounds like what Henry Jenkins put out in his MacArthur Foundation white paper in 2006. Inform that at all?
Yes, I'm familiar with Henry. You know, there are some people who continue to utilize the word information literacy just as an overarching word. You'll find Mackey and Jacobson and metaliteracy.org. It's all just really a current change in utilizing this term, but it does go exactly hand in hand with everything that Henry Jenkins said in his participatory networked writings. So I think it's probably a term that, but I think putting that meta prefix on helps people understand that it's not one particular element of literacy. Like a lot of people use the term media literacy when you're evaluating, whether or not advocacy that you have to teach students, how to evaluate whether, that the ad is good or it's just, con. And but that's just one portion of literacy. So there's a lot of different elements of literacy underneath meta. Some of you may have heard of transliteracy. That was the buzzword from 2011 to 2012. Everyone was talking about transliteracy. Think trans being kind of like, going between, like transatlantic, you're going from here to there. But it has sort of fizzled because meta meaning really thinking about it, and really juggling all the, because a lot of times we're juggling reading and viewing and this world. You are juggling so many forms of literacy at once that I feel like meta literacy really does fit. Does that answer? Yes, go ahead.
Does the definition of meta literacy really encompass actually creating?
Yes, it does. Because very creative. It's very creative. But a kindergartner painting, and then when you go through all the different things that you're going to learn and build on that, and credit your sources, that's meta literacy. It's not simply a kindergartner taking and but it's also there's more to that in meta literacy. The whole we collaborate and we also collide. We argue. No, it's like, and here's a perfect example. It all goes hand in hand because and I put up this final slide I forgot about because there's, when we're trying to explain to people what we do in virtual worlds, and you sometimes find as a virtual librarian. Excellent question. For the first few years that I was a virtual world librarian, we had to also get a lot of questions just about changing education. I would have people come to the desk and just talk about, what is the library, who also have office hours, who may not have a master's of library science, but they can help us out as a volunteer in machinima, or they're trying to figure out, building skills, or just, so some of it is in-world help, and then some of it is also the same types of questions that you would get in a physical do are very similar to what you would do in a physical library. Connect people with different information needs that they have. And we do quite a few exhibits because that way we can go and Texas one year, and several of the librarians helped at the Virtual Worlds Best Practices in Education conference to role play for that medieval quest. So my role was the Lady of Shen. Thank you very much. Or that sim closes down. Any other questions, or should we head over to in that box? You'll see the Community Virtual Library landmark and ebook. It looks kind of like a Nook, and the winning poets are in the ebook, and it will be coming out very soon. I just have to notify the winners, and it's just about to be published. So that's another way we're trying to do things just like you would in a physical library. But so shall we have travel over? I will meet you at the main library of the Community Virtual. See the community here, thanks to Rocky. It looks kind of like if you grew up a long time ago, you probably saw one of these in the real world. You click on that little catalog box and it will take you to a directory. If any of you have a couple other spaces here at the Community Virtual Library that I was talking about. The Hypergrid Resource Center, and I'm going to stop. We have Ewan Bonham speaking about connecting virtual world communities. And I'm looking very much forward to his topic because I think that's a real necessary ask here in virtual worlds, to find better ways for us all to be connected so that we can find the great simulations, we can send people to places that are of personal interest. I might point out also, as we're branching out from the Community Virtual Library here, we're kind of envisioning and InWorlds is really focusing on a steampunk fantasy type library. So, we don't have to have the same library in every virtual world. We can sort of have different branches, if you will, and places to send people when they're looking for specific things. This direction, if you were to walk straight in here, we have I'm not going to walk all the way into the exhibit because it's actually on another sim and you'll lose my voice. But that art exhibit, I think it turned out beautifully. I had a graphic designer who designed the double-decker art exhibit. If you'd like to come and meet some of the artists, they're going to talk about their work on October 8th. That's a Saturday morning. There are probably some artists that you know that put their work on display over there. And then through the woods, through the beautiful fall foliage there, you'll find Shawnee Library. Shawnee is do all types of great stories in voice, and they have storytelling at a lot of different times. This little wall here has some signage to other libraries in Second Life and spaces like the Rockcliffe University Library, the Nonprofit Commons, just different groups. There are some libraries here, and if you see a group that's not here that really Val, there is a library, the Interfaith Library at the Unity Church, and perhaps I could show you where that is.